Her thoughts were sluggish and chaotic, and her body lethargic, yet she had a strong sense of danger. She opened her eyes, immediately raising her hand against the fierce glare of both suns high in the sky. The rich boy sat beside her. She exhaled heavily. This was all his fault. Iron rings shackled his ankles, which were covered in dried rivulets of blood, and a similar pair had been clamped around her own. The metal lay heavy on her skin. Her stomach turned over. She tugged against them, straining to pull one foot free, crying out when the metal bit into her leg. Blood oozed from her scraped skin and dribbled onto the floor. Then she spotted the two thugs from the street, standing with their backs to her. She gasped, and then her hands flew to her mouth, praying they wouldn't come over. What did they want with her? She had nothing to do with a rich boy. They must know that.
"Don't draw their attention," the boy hissed. "The rings are too tight. I already tried."
"Quiet," the bearded giant barked, but didn't turn around.
"We have to escape," she whispered. "How do you suppose we do that, stupid? Right under their noses?"
She sighed. They sat upon a wooden dock at which two small boats bobbed up and down. She peered over one shoulder and observed the stack of crates on which they were both leaning. There was a small gap further along. If they could create a distraction, it might be possible to sneak away. The two thugs talked to a third man who sat behind a makeshift desk. Thin and clean-shaven, he wore a loose-fitting blue shirt and matching pleated trousers that together looked like a uniform. A gaunt face and fat nose gave him a miserable appearance. His black hair had been braided tightly into a ponytail that fell to his waist. Lissa blinked. What kind of man wore a ponytail? He counted coins into a coffer, pausing only to scribble in a ledger on the desk before him. Beyond the dock, she noticed a gently rippling ocean, colored gray instead of the deep blue of the lake at home. Her eyes widened. She had always wanted to see the dust ocean, and here it was. It seemed to go on forever. How far from home had she been taken? She studied the way the dust flowed ashore in tiny waves. It didn't look wet. In fact, it didn't look like water at all, but an extremely fine powder. The dust ocean, she had heard it called, but surely they hadn't meant that literally. How could the ocean not have water? She shook her head. It was hard to think straight. Squinting against the glare of Eldrar, the largest sun, she peered out at several large ships anchored offshore. Tiny boats moved back and forth between them and the dock, each rowed by two men, and piled so high with cargo she wondered how they didn't sink. "Is that the dust ocean?" she asked the boy.
"Duh."
He rolled his eyes. She sucked in a breath. "Listen, I'm sorry we're here and chained up, but you ran into me, remember? We're in the same trouble, so don't you think we should work together? I'm Lissa. What's your name?" He swiveled to face her, his chains rattling, and looked her up and down like a buyer at an Oglon market.
"I don't befriend commoners, especially stupid girls."
She glared at him. What an ungrateful wretch. "I tried to help you. Doesn't that count for anything?"
"I didn't ask you to. All you did was call for the guards," he hissed. "Great rescue."
"At least I tried, you mean, stuck-up snot." Why had she? She should have followed her parents' advice. He laughed and turned away.
"Yes, it is," he said a moment later.
"Huh?"
"The dust ocean, since you're obviously too ignorant to know."
"I've never seen it before, all right? So this is Pelin?" He ignored her and picked at mud dried onto his shirt. Her gaze settled on an empty plate and mug beside him, and her stomach growled. "Where did you get the food?" she said.
"They brought it earlier. Bread, meat, and a delicious hunk of cheese." He sneered at her.
"You ate it all and didn't save me any? Pig!"
"You're a commoner. You should be used to an empty belly. It's only going to get worse."
"What do you mean?"